Okay, last one. Probably. I really want the secret to come out already. And I hope it comes out before they bang. You weren't kidding when you said these costumes were heavy. Gray groans as he slips another garment bag over his shoulder. There's a linen ruff around his neck and a Renaissance-style hat on his head, giving him the look of a kid who's just rummaged through someone's costume box and gotten lost in it. What did you make them out of? Lead? He asks. It's not the material that's heavy. I stifle a giggle and push him towards the door. Those dresses have about 4 different layers. I had to make them true to the time period the play is set in. Did you know that fabric choices in the Renaissance era were a huge part of showing off someone's status? I continue, getting swept up in my passion for the subject. And of course, back then, they didn't even have zippers, so people were literally sewn into their outfits. Imagine always needing someone else to help you get in and out of clothes. I giggle at the thought, and Gray gives me an impressed look as he comes up beside me. Well, you certainly know your stuff, he says with a grin. And if you ever need it, I'm always ready to help you undress. He wiggles his eyebrows suggestively, and I scoff at the remark, doing my best to smother my laughter. I adjust the bags that are slung over my arm as I pull the front door shut behind me and ensure it's locked. Gray holds the door of the waiting taxi open for me, and we bundle into the back seat, the costumes much too heavy to carry all the way to Kleiner Academy. We sort ourselves out between the garment bags, hats, and shoes, and when the car takes off down the road, I look over at him and say thoughtfully, "You may not care about fashion, but these kinds of details are important, especially when it comes to an Academy production." Gray raises an eyebrow at me, and I'm well aware that I'm strung tighter than usual. I just really want everyone to like these outfits. First of all, who says I don't care about fashion? You've seen the way I dress. He gives me a crooked grin. I know he's teasing, and I find it difficult to stop the smile that spreads across my face. It's true, though, his style does suit him. Second, who cares what a bunch of Academy snobs think about a couple of dresses and tunics? With a sigh, I look out the window, watching the familiar buildings pass us by wistfully. I'm just nervous, that's all. Wringing my hands together in my lap, I do a last-minute count of all the pieces in my head and pray I haven't forgotten anything. If people like these costumes, then they'll come to me for other events, I explain. There's the Academy Ball, the graduation dinner, and future theatre productions, to name a few. Something settles on my chest like a paperweight, images of the worst-case scenario washing over me. And if they don't like them... Gray surprises me by reaching over and taking my trembling hand in his, holding it tight. They're gonna love him. How could they not, after all the effort you've put into them? I let out a slow exhale, smiling at him in return. Thanks. I hope you're right. I don't know if you can see. You can't really see. But, Leo is, in the left-hand top corner. My cat Leo. You can't really see him. He's literally, like, above my mic right now. Like, up here. The same. Okay. The taxi turns a corner and rumbles along down the road, getting closer and closer to our destination. Of course, I understand what reputation could do for a business, Gray says absent-mindedly, looking out the window ahead of us. Yeah, you would know. And it's like a good thing that you can stay in the same place for your business, right? Mr. Gambler? I believe. Speaking of business, I say as I adjust my grip but don't let go of his hand, I've noticed more people around the basement than usual lately. He gives me a look from the corner of his eye, one that I can't quite decipher. To be fair, I actually think it's fucked up that he... I didn't even consider this. It's fucked up that he's lying about what he's doing down there when it could directly impact her safety. Because I'm not saying that all gamblers are bad people, but they're not known to have the best judgment, especially if they're like chronic gamblers. They're not known to have the best judgment. And, I mean, Ivan's there. He's literally putting her in danger. So, you know what? Fair's fair. I'm saying it. Fair's fair. And you know what? If he knows that she's lying, he's just keeping everything to himself, then she's a better person than he is. She's doing it for good reasons. She's like, no, she's doing it for selfish reasons. I'm lying. I'm lying. Who would have thought so many people were into board games? I add with a shrug. His lips curve in a way that means nothing but trouble, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Oh, you'd be surprised, he says. I thought after our little game of Jumble, you might be interested in other games. I squeeze his hand in surprise, not missing the insinuation. Having spent so much time around him lately, I've learned to expect that some kind of flirtatious remark will always follow that smile of his. I have to be in this? What the fuck? Only if you're the one teaching me the rules. I flirt right back, my mouth hooking up at the side. Gray leans closer, the subtle scent of his cologne drifting over me when he brushes a few strands of hair back from my face. Trust me, I wouldn't let anyone else tell you what to do, he says softly, though his eyes burn with intent. My breath sticks in my throat as I meet him head-on. I worry for a moment that the driver might overhear us, but then decide just as quickly that I don't care. Neither would I say, keeping my eyes locked on his. The air between us is charged with electricity, bringing goosebumps to the surface of my skin. Surprisingly, Gray pulls back first and huffs a laugh, leaning back against the leather of his seat. Glad to hear it. When I feel the car slowing down, I peek out the window to find we're just arriving at the academy. Finally, I let out a breath. I don't think it's a good idea to bring him in with you, actually. I'm just thinking this right now. After gathering everything up from the back of the taxi, we head towards the gates of the school. Classes are finished for the day, though Nikki had messaged me to say the drama club would be rehearsing in the auditorium until dark. Gray stuffs his hands into his pockets, casually looking around. Feels a lot less intense since the last time we were here. I stifle a chuckle. Well, last time we jumped out a window to get away from one of the teachers. He grins at me, his eyes lifting up at the corners. I'd do it again. How about we enter the school like normal people this time around? I offer. He politely bows and gestures towards the entrance. After you, milady. Tip of the fedora. I roll my eyes at him with a smile. We enter the auditorium and I instantly spot Nikki in front of the stage, watching over a group of kids as they rehearse a scene. I recognize it at once, the infamous death scene. I watch transfixed as Juliet picks up the fake dagger and stabs it into her stomach. A ripple of red ribbons stream from her abdomen in a theatrical portrayal of blood, and I'm glad to know that the costumes won't be ruined by any fake blood on the night. That's pretty cool. Can we put these down somewhere? Gray mumbles from beside me. My arms are about to break off. How is it a good idea bringing him here to one of your old lackeys? He might not bring it up in front of a stranger and he might not recognize Gray, but it's a bit fucking risky. With an amused shake of my head, I lead the way down the steps in the middle of the building, past rows and rows of seats and a few spectators that have come to watch the rehearsal. I watch Nikki's form grow closer as we approach, and a thought suddenly trickles into my mind. When she falls for somebody, she's fucking dumb. How am I supposed to explain to him that the Phantom, of all people, is here to help me deliver the costumes? And even worse than that we're friends. I spent so much time worrying about the costumes that I hadn't even come up with a way to avoid the topic. Upon hearing our footsteps, Nikki turns around and smiles wide, his eyes going straight to the bags in our hands. I didn't do that right. They're here, he exclaims loud enough for the actors to pause their scene. Thank you so much for bringing them down here, Valkii. No problem, I say with a forced smile, stepping in front of Gray to block him from view. This fails miserably since he stands over half a foot taller than me, but I don't know what else to do. At least I can be sure that Nikki won't recognize him from appearance alone. Gray shouldn't be able to recognize him either. Nikki was much shorter in his teenage years and definitely had less facial hair. You can put them down in the first row. I'll have the actors try them on while you're here, to make sure they're all okay, Nikki says as he takes one of the bags from me and leads the way. After placing the costumes down over the seats and directing them to the right people, Nikki lets out a satisfied sigh and turns to Gray. I don't believe we've met. I'm Nikki, he says with a smile, shaking Gray's hand firmly. He's just a new friend of mine, I reply, stepping in between them. So, how are rehearsals going? I ask with a forced smile. Nikki frowns a little, giving Gray a second look before shaking his head and grinning. Excellent. I'd say we're almost ready for the performance next week, after a couple of dress rehearsals, of course. That's great, I say, and I'm truly glad to hear it. We walk with Nikki over to the front of the stage, glancing over the props and set pieces. The Academy really hasn't held back for this production. Everything looks so professional and well made. I'm so confused at the line of communication and information gathering here. He knows that Ivan and Gray hang out. How, if he doesn't know what he currently looks like? So he heard it through the grapevine? Right? Not that he personally has seen it himself, otherwise he'd recognize him. You'll stop by on opening night, won't you? I promise I'd save you a seat. I'm sure you'd enjoy seeing your work in action. I'll be there, I bob on the spot, smiling broadly. If the glimpse I got earlier is anything to go by, the play is going to be amazing. Great, I'm looking forward to it. You can sit with me, he says with a smile. Beside me, I catch a hint of something in Gray's demeanor as he shifts around. Jealous? The actors begin to emerge in their costumes and I take out my portable sewing kits, making some small adjustments here and there. Gray takes a seat in the audience a few rows back, pulling out his phone while he waits. I felt bad for interrupting him before. It was rude of me, but I just couldn't risk Nikki finding out who he is and spilling everything. Overall, the costumes fit great and they look amazing. I get a glimpse of the actors on stage in them under the different lights, and a bubble of pride swells within me. I did a really good job. Valkii, I've been meaning to ask you something, Nikki asks after a little while, coming to stand beside me. From the corner of my eye, I see Gray look up, and I know he's watching the two of us. What is it? I ask, ignoring the weight of Gray's gaze. I wondered if you'd come meet me for a drink sometime this week. It's been so long since we spent any time together, it might be nice to catch up. Oh, sure, that would be really nice, I say, a little caught on the spot. Fantastic, I look forward to hearing all about this boutique of yours. I hope you'll tell me everything. I'll tell you anything you want to know, I say with a smile, sparing a glance at Gray, who has returned to his phone. We should head off, I say to Nikki, noticing him follow my gaze. We'll leave you to your rehearsals. Nikki nods, and I don't miss the final look he throws at Gray before he smiles at me. Of course, thanks again for the costumes. They really are perfect. After saying our goodbyes, Gray and I head out of the auditorium, neither of us speaking as we reach the street. There's a tension between us that wasn't there before, and I hate the way it feels. The sky overhead is quickly darkening, a chill lingering in the air. I've already called a taxi, though it should take a bit before it arrives. Old boyfriend? He asks. I can tell by his tone that he's less than impressed by what happened back there, but to ask if Nikki is my boyfriend? That's really odd. No, just an old classmate. I look him in the eye and smile, trying to sound casual. Is that so? He raises an eyebrow, and I know he doesn't believe me. I don't reply, and I'm thankful that he seems to take the hint and say no more about it. As we walk down the road, he shoves his hand in his pocket, suddenly letting out a soft laugh. I remember this place, he says as he slows, looking around. You know, back in the day, I had a crush on an academy girl. Oh? I turn and look at him, surprise written all over my face. What are you talking about? You know this, it's you. This is news to me. You stupid? Yeah, you kind of remind me of her, he says with the dip of his head. He toes the ground in front of him, giving me a sly smile. I rack my brain, trying to remember if I ever saw one of the academy girls with him. I'm sure I never did. What was she like? I ask, hoping he'll give me a clue. She was stubborn, he laughs. A real pain in the ass. My eyebrows dip in the middle. He said that I reminded him of this girl, and now I don't quite know whether to take that as a compliment or not. She was also funny and brave and beautiful, he adds. His mouth quirks at the way I frown, though I don't know what he has to be so amused by. I still can't figure out who the girl is. We ended up in this very bush once, hiding from a few gang members. I was trying to do something nice by returning the phone she lost, and in return she bit my head off, he says, smiling at the memory. Oh, I suppose I do know that girl after all. She was me. When I don't say anything, Gray steps closer, his pale hair falling into his face when he stares down at me. Valkii. He says my name, and I can't stop myself from looking at him, tumbling deeper into those stormy grey eyes. You trust me, don't you? He had asked the same question the night of the fun fair, and I evaded the question. I'm still not sure of my answer, and it doesn't help that something about this situation feels different. You seem to put a lot of weight on the word. Is it so important to you? I ask. It is. Without trust, what else do you have? But it takes time to build that trust, doesn't it? I say, rebutting him gently. As our eyes meet, silence befalls us both. Our gaze is charged with emotion, with so many things unsaid. Oh. When he leans in, a hand on my waist, I don't stop him, my heart beating beneath my chest like the wings of a tiny hummingbird. Great, wait, I stammer. I never expected to fall for him so fast. I want this so badly it hurts, but still, our first kiss shouldn't happen like this. He drawls out. His nose brushes mine, his warm breath sending a ripple of chills across my skin. My eyes close, lashes flitting across the tops of my cheeks, and I want him to close that gap between us. I want him to kiss me, but he has to know everything first. My body draws closer to his, my breath staggers, waiting for the moment our lips will touch. All of a sudden, the taxi pulls up, and my mind reels itself back. Panic hits me harder than a freight train, and I pull away from him. What am I doing? I can't do this. I shouldn't be doing this when I've been lying all this time. I'm sorry, I say before I enter the taxi and close the door. Olympus, please, I tell the driver. See ya. Gray silently watches me as I leave him, and a feeling of guilt and remorse eats away at me. I don't see Gray for the rest of the week after I ditched him, but I know he's been around. It's like there's something in the air whenever he's on the premises. I can feel it like electricity crackling against my skin. I still hear the group on their usual nights, and once or twice I've run into Gray's friends as they've arrived to play games. They're always polite, and after Gray banned them from drinking on the premises, they're fairly well behaved, so I have no complaints. All of them except Ivan, of course, but luckily I haven't run into him again since the night he showed up drunk and missed the game of Dragon Den. And then there's Gray himself. I've been avoiding him, and I think he's doing the same to me. I guess after leaving him like that without an explanation would make anyone a little peeved. I don't know, to be honest. I find myself closing the store later each day, thinking he might stop by, but he never does. And then I always feel silly for waiting. I should just talk to him first, sending him a message, say I'm sorry, or head down to the basement when he's there alone. Somehow I just can't bring myself to do it. And then I decide maybe it's better this way. My phone buzzes and my chest clenches, silently hoping it's a message from Gray, but it's from Sarah or Nikki. When I check my screen, my heart drops. Sarah's name flashes across the screen. Hey, you want to catch a movie tonight? I haven't heard from you all week. I can't, sorry, I'm buried under work. Boo, let me know when you're free to hang out. Of course. I lay back on the sofa and let my phone drop beside me before I lose myself in another episode of Super Yacht Singles. I feel bad about lying to my best friend, but I'm really not in a social mood and I don't want to have to explain to her what's wrong. Because when it comes down to it, nothing is wrong at all. Nothing was ever going to happen with Gray and I. I couldn't let it. When my eyes drift over to the bottom shelf of the bookcase, settling on the jumble box, I try my best not to cry. Sweet dreams are made of these. The taxi arrives at the nightclub. Nikki messaged me earlier today, reminding me that I agreed to meet him for a drink, and I was happy to see his name pop up on my screen. Going out into the world will give me a distraction from everything else going on in my life. I haven't spoken to Gray all week, and I'm determined not to let it ruin my mood. I feel bad about blowing Sarah off last night and then meeting up with Nikki, but it's easier this way. I know that Nikki won't pry. And I can't mope around on my couch watching reality TV forever. The bar we're meeting at is on Academy territory and used to be a frequent haunt of the gang once they were old enough to drink. I've avoided it for a long time, afraid that I might run into too many familiar faces, but right now I'm not seeing a whole lot of familiar people at all. In fact, given the look of some of the people hanging around here, I think they might be Riversiders. Tentatively, I enter the building, looking around for Nikki's familiar face. I spot him sitting on a stool at the bar, and he smiles when he sees me. There you are. He greets me with a hug and a kiss on the cheek, gesturing for me to sit beside him. What can I get you? Just a glass of wine, thanks, I say as I shrug out of my coat, hanging it over the back of the bar stool. Glancing around, I see even more unfamiliar faces inside the bar, and more than a few of them are looking my way, sizing me up. I pull my handbag close. The bartender sets a glass in front of me, and I take a long sip of my drink. This week has been strange and much too long. Meeting up with a friend couldn't have come at a better time. Nikki smiles, waiting for me to set my glass down again before he speaks. So, how are things with you? How's the business? He asks, and I can tell by his tone that he's genuinely interested. It's going great, for the most part, I say. I'm still building up a client base, but I'm sure I'll get there eventually. Is your craftsmanship with the costume? If your craftsmanship with the costumes is any indicator, I don't doubt it. Nikki raises his glass to me before taking a sip. It surprises me how much he's changed since before. He's much more eloquent with his words. He's really grown up. I smile, thinking of the costumes I'd made for the play and feeling a small twinge of guilt. Although I had enjoyed making them, I had had my own personal motivation for taking on the job. I have to be honest with you. My intentions when making the costumes weren't entirely noble, I admit, and Nikki cocks his head in interest. Oh? I swallow down the lump in my throat, giving a nervous laugh. I was hoping that if people liked my work, they might commission me to tailor their outfits for other Academy events. Nikki laughs out loud, and though the sound catches me off guard, it chases away a little of the guilt. Jeez, Valkii, you had me scared. I thought it was something serious, he grins. Well, hey, the school blog will be doing a write-up on the performance. I'll make sure they include your details on there. Let them know who's responsible for the costumes. Really? I almost choke on my drink in surprise. That would be amazing. He gives me an amused look, his eyes crinkling behind his glasses. We're still friends, aren't we? It's only natural to help each other out. Oh god, what do you want in return? I nod, though my smile falters a little. I've already helped him out with the costumes for the play. That must be what he's thinking about. And what about you, Professor? How's the teaching gig going? I ask him. He leans against the counter, getting comfortable. Honestly, it's great. The kids are the best part, even though they're always getting themselves into trouble. His eyes light up when he speaks. Oh? What kind of trouble? I encourage him to continue. Well, about a week ago, a couple of boys from my class managed to swipe the keys to the principal's car and fill the air conditioning unit with confetti. She was furious. He chuckles at the memory and shakes his head fondly. Man, it was near impossible to keep a straight face when she told me about it. I almost wish I had come up with the idea first. Sounds like just the kind of things we got up to at school, I say with a laugh. Do you remember the time we broke into the groundskeeper's shed and covered everything in bubble wrap? Like it was yesterday. He was a good guy. Thought it was hilarious, Nikki chuckles. What about the time we let ourselves get locked in the library? And camped out overnight, yes. Apart from Sarah attempting to scale an entire wall of books and almost knocking it over, that was the best night. She was crazy back then. Nikki pushes his glasses up and wipes at his eyes as he chuckles. Oh, she still is, I assure him with a giggle. We laugh together, ordering a couple more drinks and reminiscing on all of our old memories, and there are a lot of them. It's good to hear that kids these days haven't changed much, I say after a while. They really haven't, Nikki says. And besides all that mischief, the rivalry with both Riverside High and DeCapo is still going strong. I don't think that will ever change, I admit, my smile slowly fading. Nikki looks away suddenly, clearing his throat a little before he speaks. You know, as much as I've loved catching up with you, there's also another reason I asked you to meet me, he admits as he leans in closer. What is it? I ask, feeling a little lightheaded from the wine. I don't know how much you know about the old gang, but there's a few of us who still hang out, keeping an eye on our territory. He starts, and my stomach sinks. I should have known it was something to do with the gang. As if sensing I'm already beginning to close off, Nikki leans forward, his eyes finding mine. Things started getting bad a few years back, he explains. The Hammer and Riversiders took over almost our entire territory. That's why I've seen so many unfamiliar faces around here tonight, I say. Nikki nods in confirmation. Most of the gang were too afraid to stand up against them after you and Sarah left us. Over the years, it's been getting worse and worse. I don't know what this has to do with me, I say bluntly. Nikki runs a hand through his hair before speaking, seeming to look for the right words. The gang is still loyal to you, Valkii. I wanted to ask if you'll come back and fight with us again. We could take back our turf together. Oh, it's not exclusively run by high schoolers anymore. I thought that Rex left the school and then gave up the gang. I'll admit that I miss it sometimes, I say with a wistful smile, thinking back on those days. We were a force to be reckoned with, weren't we? You were, that's for sure, Nikki says with a grin. I always thought you were going to be the one to take everything, take it all and leave the other gang leaders in the dust. I think back on those days and how I was so close to getting everything I ever wanted. After Gray was arrested for carrying a weapon and Ivan was charged for stabbing Sarah, I could have taken control of everything. Too bad things didn't quite work out like that, I say quietly, taking another sip from my wine glass. Yeah, Nikki agrees. I don't regret my decision to leave, though. I'm happy that I got to open the boutique and do what I love, I say. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It won't be long before the Riversider's presence causes trouble for your business, I guarantee it. He fidgets with his empty glass, rolling the bottom across the bar. They're out to own everything there is in the city. They won't stop. And the DeCapo gang? I ask, not sure I want to hear the answer. They've been laying low, but rumor has it that the Hammer has them in the palm of their hands. Whenever the Riversiders come for the last of us, and they will, you can be sure that the Capos will be on their side. But why? Why would they work together? I ask. I mentioned the Hammer and the Phantom have been up to something, right? Nikki says. I think they're planning on getting rid of the last of the Academy loyalists, ridding us from the board completely. I want to believe that Gray wouldn't do something like that, but I know what he was like back in his prime. I saw it with my own eyes. But how would he benefit from something like that? He spends his time running a board game group out of my basement. Then again, why is Ivan so involved in the same group? Maybe the gaming is just a way for him to blow off steam, but I can never be sure when it comes to him. They're dangerous, Valkii. More so than they ever were. He says, and I swear I see the hand around his glass tremble. I'm afraid of what could happen to all of us. Nikki has always been serious about stuff like this, but I've never seen him so scared before. Still, none of this makes any sense to me. I can't, Nikki, I'm sorry. I left the gang for a reason. I understand. He dips his head, defeat finally washing over him. But if you ever change your mind, you know where to find me. Thankfully, he drops the topic for the rest of the evening. I'm gonna keep going. One more chapter. This will probably be a longer video, sorry. So weird being back here, Sarah says as we pace the corridors of our old high school, Tailor Academy. It's the opening night of Romeo and Juliet, and Nikki had promised to save Sarah and I a pair of tickets, encouraging us both to come along. I'm kind of getting used to it by now, I say, but my first time coming back here was definitely weird. I think back on the day Gray and I stuck into the school, and my stomach turns unpleasantly. We still haven't spoken since the last time we were here, and I'm definitely feeling his absence. Taking in a deep breath, I force myself not to think about it. Tonight is all about supporting Nikki's work with the play and seeing my costumes in action. The rest of the world can wait until tomorrow. The classrooms we pass by are dark, the lights all turned off for the evening while everyone gathers in the auditorium for the play. We were so different back in school, don't you think? Sarah is still talking, her arm looped through mine. Speak for yourself. I like to think I've retained my youthful character, I tease her. She snorts loudly and the two of us giggle like the school kids we used to be as we reach the doors to the auditorium and claim our tickets. The place is packed when we enter, both students and parents chatting and finding their seats, all waiting excitedly for the show to start. Though the lights are dim, we find our places easily, up in the very front row. I'm just about to sit when a familiar voice calls over to us. Valkii, you made it! Nikki greets us with a grin as he comes over. And Sarah, I hardly recognize you. Ditto! When did you get so tall, Sprout? Sarah greets him with a hug and I hang back as they reunite excitedly. It's been a long time since they've seen each other. It's good to see you all. Nikki turns to me. Just wait until you see your costumes on stage. They look amazing. I can't wait. I squeeze my hands together excitedly, glancing towards the red curtains that are currently hiding the stage from sight. Have the garments held up okay during rehearsals? I ask Nikki. He gives a swift nod. They're perfect, no problems at all, and the kids will love them. I smile to myself, happy to hear it. All my hard work is going to pay off tonight, and I'm ecstatic about it. I was just telling Valkii how weird it is to be back here. Sarah's voice cuts in between us. Uh-oh. She lied. Valkii lied. I lied. To Nikki. About coming here with her a few weeks ago or whatever. And now she's dobbing me in. Oh! How long ago has it been now? About 10 years? Nikki's forehead creases in confusion. But it's not the first time you've been back, is it? Valkii told me the two of you snuck in here a while back. I freeze for a moment, suddenly remembering that I had told Nikki that Sarah and I had broken in here when really it had been me and Gray. Sarah gives me a sidelong glance before she laughs off the question with a wave of her hand. Of course we did, but we didn't get to see much. This time we were actually invited, she says, earning a laugh from Nikki and diverting his attention. I give her a grateful smile when she's not looking and she winks discreetly. Well, the show will be starting soon, Nikki says with a wistful look towards the stage. He wrings his hands together nervously. I should head backstage and give the kids one last prep talk. I'll be right back. He smiles brightly before he hurries off and Sarah and I sit, making ourselves comfortable on the surprisingly plush auditorium chairs. Lying to one of your oldest friends, are you? Tut-tut, Valkii. Sarah leans closer and whispers. I give her a pointed look. I panicked. I didn't know what else to say. She grins and flips her hair dramatically. Lucky I'm so amazing at covering for you. Though I roll my eyes at her, I can't stop myself from smiling. Despite us teasing each other relentlessly, Sarah really is a good friend, and I appreciate her jumping in back there. I'm glad we came tonight, she continues. I was getting worried you were never going to leave your house again. Of course I was. I've just been busy, that's all, I say dismissively. Busy with Gray, she teases. Busy avoiding him, more like it. Instead, I say, no, busy with work. I've had more clients walking into the boutique. It's been really good. She smiles at that, nudging my shoulder with hers. That is good. I'm happy for you. I know how hard you work to build up the business. I don't get to say anything else before the chatter of the crowd suddenly hushes as the curtains pull back from the stage. Nikki comes back out to take a seat with us right as the single spotlight flicks on, an excited grin spreads across his face. Then the narrator begins her part, and the show begins. Romeo and Juliet is certainly not an unfamiliar story to me, but it's fun to see the props and everything else the Academy has come up with for the production. As I expected, they've really pulled out all the stops. It really looks like a professional production. My eyes widen when the first of the actors wearing my costume steps onto the stage. It looks just as I imagined. Better, in fact. A wave of pride washes over me as I watch the show, fixated on my work and how it looks on stage against the props and under different lighting effects. The actors play their parts perfectly, ensnaring the attention of the audience through their performances. And then it's over! By the end of the show, my face hurts from smiling so much I don't even mind the tragic ending. The actors end the performance to a round of applause. Sarah and I stand with the rest of the crowd, clapping our hands together. That was amazing, I yelled to Nikki through the noise. He's smiling from ear to ear. I don't think I've ever seen him so happy before. I have to run backstage for a few minutes, but I'll be back, he says with a grin. Don't leave before saying goodbye. Nikki darts off and we smile after him. It's funny to see him so excited about something like a high school play, but it's also really sweet. Nikki, a teacher. Who would have thought? Sarah laughs from beside me. And the drama teacher at that. If you had told me in high school that his passion was theatre, I would never have believed you, she adds. I giggle too, shaking my head in disbelief. I know, right? I'm still having trouble adjusting to the thought. He was such a rascal back then. When the auditorium lights come back on, we pile out into the school hallway with the rest of the audience and wait for Nikki. While we wait, we look over the faculty portraits that are hung on the walls, pointing out the familiar faces and laughing at old memories. Oh look, our science teacher is still here. Remember her? Sarah holds a finger up to the glass and wrinkles her nose. Yeah, she was awful, I say as I look over her shoulder and find a familiar pinched face staring back at me from the frame. Poor kids. I look at the pictures further down the wall as I trail along, finding a few class photos that look familiar. Sarah, check this one out, I wave her over. Holding a finger up to the glass, I point out two figures in the front of the picture. It's us, Sarah squeals, nudging me aside while trying to get a better look. Oh my god, look at my hair. I can't believe you let me leave the house looking like that. She pouts. I laugh lightly. I think the purple looks great. Maybe you could bring the style back? I'd love to see the look on Jed's face if I did. She grins. Valkii, over here, Nikki shouts. Yes, Sarah's here too, girl. I mean, boy. I turn at the sound of Nikki's voice, finding him standing with a few other people near the auditorium doors. I've been looking for you, he says with a smile as Sarah and I head over. I want you to meet a few people. These are some of the parents from the school's parents association. I give a small nod in greeting and they all smile at me while Nikki speaks. They were asking me who designed the costumes on stage and didn't want to pass up on meeting the designer herself, he grins. Oh hey. That's right, says the well-dressed woman. You did a fantastic job on the costumes. Congratulations. The annual production hasn't been that well-dressed in years. Yes, extremely well, especially for your first time working on the show, says the taller one. I couldn't keep my eyes off all the outfits. They were so intricately detailed. A third woman gushes, and the rest of the group all pitch in to give me their compliments. I can do a lot more than sew a few costumes, I smile, seizing the moment to promote myself. I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy the attention. Oh, now I'm intrigued. What else do you do? The same woman asks. I design and create my own fashion line, I say proudly. I've only opened my boutique recently, but you're welcome to stop by and see what I have on display. You won't regret it, I add, flashing her a smile. In that case, I'll bring my daughter. She needs a gown for the upcoming ball, she explains. And not like one of those department store dresses either. Something special. I'd be happy to design something original for her, I say, and the woman looks pleased. And what about for the boys? Another woman asks. Do you do formal suits? I nod at her. Yes, absolutely. Great, I'll bring my son by this week too. He also needs an outfit for the ball. I hand out a few business cards with the promise of being able to take on appointments whenever they're ready. Even if I have to shuffle a few things around, it's worth it in order to snag these kinds of clients. When they say goodbye and head off, Nikki turns to me with a beaming smirk. See? I told you everyone would love your work, he boasts. Yeah, that was a given, Sarah interrupts. Olympus is the best boutique in town. I'm just so happy that people are interested in seeing more, I say with a smile of my own, and I'm excited to see how the boutique grows from here. I think I can safely say we'd love for you to work on the costumes for the production again next year, Nikki grins. I know it's a whole year away, but with you becoming so popular, I might have to book in advance. I laughed softly, giving him a fond look. Thanks for the confidence boost, and thank you for inviting us tonight too, I say before turning to Sarah. We should head off before it gets too late. We say our goodbyes with the promise to all meet up together again soon, and Sarah and I leave the school. You always say you're going to meet up, but you never do. Tonight was fun, she grins as we stop on the corner where we'll part ways. Promise it won't be so long before we hang out again? I promise, I say with a nod, waving her off. Get home safe. I turn and head in the other direction, shoving my hands in the pockets of my coat as I walk. The night air is cool, but it's a nice change from the stuffiness of the auditorium. This night is ripe for drama. However, the closer I get to home, the more the thrill of the night fades and the mess of the rest of my life creeps in. Gray and I haven't said more than a few words to each other since the day outside the school, when he helped me drop off the costumes to Nikki. I thought you'd never seen each other. I've wanted to stop him for a chat or even message him, but every single time something stops me. I can't stop myself from thinking that he's giving me the silent treatment on purpose. The only thing I don't know is why. You left him on the side of the road. That's why. And also, you keep, like, you're also hot and cold with him, you know what I mean? Approaching my building, I head around to the back door, knowing it'll probably be unlocked since it's one of Gray's usual gaming nights. He's been having them more often lately, and while I don't mind him using his space for what he wants, his silent presence doesn't make things any less awkward. Using my phone to light the way, I finally make it to the door, my fingers brushing over the handle. Ugh. Ivan. Hey, sweetheart. A familiar voice distracts me and I pull back, turning to find Ivan leaning against the back wall. He watches me through half-lidded eyes, dragging on the end of a cigarette. Where have you been? He asks casually. Out, I reply curtly, reaching for the door again and entering the hallway. Uh-oh. From the hallway, I can hear Gray's game night in full swing downstairs. The thought of him being so close makes my stomach clench tightly. The door doesn't close behind me, so I turn to see Ivan standing in the doorway, still watching me. What do you want? I ask him, my mood quickly going south. That's not a very nice way to speak to an old friend. He knows! I told you! There's something about his smile that makes me pause. Not his words! Ivan has always been a creep, but the way he's looking at me now is different. He's looking at me like a cat who's trapped a little mouse under its paw. You know, I thought you looked familiar. He starts talking again as he walks into the corridor, letting the door shut behind him. And then it came to me, the night of the fight. I was there. Remember? I heard the call you made. The Valkyrie. My skin crawls at the sound of my gang name, goosebumps rising to the surface of my skin. How the hell did he figure it out? When you got into a fighting stance, he flashed back to when you beat him up. What do you want? I ask again, but this time the meaning is different. Ivan snickers, knowing he's both figuratively and literally got me cornered. Heard you've been meeting with some of your old gang mates, that little fella from back in the day. What was his name? He squints his eyes at me. None of your business, I say impatiently, and he's not so little anymore. He lets out a low laugh, as though he finds the situation nothing short of amusing. Either way, it's got me suspicious. Maybe you're thinking of getting the old gang back together, he muses. I shake my head. I'm not part of that anymore. I've got a business to run now, a whole nother life. I try to walk up the stairs, thoroughly done with this conversation, but then his next words stop me. Is that why you're spending so much time with our friend, the Phantom? He sneers. Or do you just feel guilty for what you did to him 10 years ago? You don't know what you're talking about, I spit out, my red eyes narrowing at him. It's your fault the Phantom was expelled from school, he continues. Your fault that half his gang rejected him. Don't you think I know that? I snap, my hands balling to fists at my side instead. Ivan simply grins wider. I can tell he's enjoying this. Gray is so listening. Probably. I've been thinking to myself, why would Gray want to be so close to the woman who destroyed all of that for him? He asks. I swallow nervously around the lump in my throat, feeling my heart beating in my chest 1,000,000 miles a minute. Because he doesn't know who you are, does he? Not truly. Ivan steps closer still until there's barely a few inches of space between us, and then he stares down at me, his eyes going cold. Here's how it's gonna go, the Valkyrie. You're gonna stay the hell away from your old gang. I don't care if you think you're not reforming. You stay away anyway. He growls at me. Go to hell, Ivan, I spit back. He laughs quietly, and there's something sinister about the sound. How about I head downstairs right now and tell your friend Gray who you are, and what you did to him, he threatens. Because that's what I'll do if you don't do as I say, sweetheart. You can be sure of that. I say nothing, my tongue sitting uselessly in my mouth, because what can I say? One wrong move and he'll surely spill everything to Gray. And I can't have that. I just can't. I haven't been preparing myself to confess to Gray all this time only to have it stolen away from me and thrown in his face. I want to be the one to tell him. It should come from me. Then fucking tell him. Ivan assesses me for a moment, his cold gaze melting as his lips hook up on one side. If all that sounds so unappealing to you, you can always work with me. Bring your friends over to my gang. We'd be unstoppable, he says smoothly. You really think I consider that, after you just threatened me? I shoot back at him. His shoulders move up and down as he laughs quietly. I didn't think you'd consider it anyway. I've seen the way you look at Gray, like a lovesick little puppy dog. I can just break your jaw and make sure you can't talk. I hiss up at him. If he thinks he can play me, I'm going to show him that I'm ready and willing to play his little game. I may no longer be a gang leader, but I'm not ready to let him threaten me and think he can get away with it. You really think you can stand against me? Ivan snickers, drawing himself up to his full height and towering over me. I stare him down, unflinching. Try me. No knives, no dirty tricks. I bet I can take you down. It's been a long time since I've been in a fight, but I know what to do. Ivan is bigger than me, much bigger, but I still remember exactly how to use that to my advantage. Provided he doesn't pull any dirty moves on me, of course. But even so, I'm ready to go. I already have the upper hand here. I don't need to prove anything to a washed-up gang leader like you, he says with a sneer, waving a hand at me dismissively. My blood boils in my veins, fury coursing through me. I'll remind you that this is my property, so I'd think twice about trying to threaten me if I was you. I'm sure your reputation with the police is strained enough as it is. He surprises me by laughing, a long, drawn-out sound, one that sends an unpleasant chill down my spine. You've always been fond of calling the cops, haven't you, sweetheart? He says, his tone amused. Try it and see how far it gets you this time. I think they'll find a few surprises down in your basement if they look hard enough. I'm about to reply, to question him about that, when footsteps on the stairs cut me off. What? Whoa. Gray appears, his eyebrows dipped in the middle when he finds us standing alone together, engaged in a heated conversation. He looks taken aback, and I want to say something, to tell him about Ivan threatening me, even when I know I can't. Ivan, you're up, he says simply, waiting for the other man to make a move. Ivan gives me one last look before he leaves and says quietly, Remember what I said? I watch helplessly as he leaves, my heart still pounding incessantly. It looks as though the hammer is back in full force, and this time he's more of a threat than I ever thought. The next evening, I stand at the top of the stairs to the basement, my eyes fixed firmly on the door below. I can hear music playing, but no chatter. Gray is most likely down there alone. It's time for me to finally do something about this silence between us. Stealing my nerves, I head down the stairs and stand in front of the basement door. I knock on the wood. When I get no answer, I go ahead and push open the door and walk down the stairs. I spot Gray immediately, shuffling a pack of playing cards and setting it on the table in the middle of the room. He looks up as I enter and something in his eyes turn hard. Hey, I say tentatively, still hovering near the door. Hi. He spares me a few measly seconds before he goes back to laying out the cards and other various pieces on the table. I swallow down my doubt and step further into the room, right next to the table. I wanted to talk to you about last night, when you saw me and Ivan. I start. It's not what you think it was. Why would I think it was anything? He says tightly. You seemed mad when you left. I thought it might be... I trail off. What do I think it might be? The reason why he's being so unfriendly towards me right now? No, I know he's still annoyed I left him that night. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that everything is okay between us, I say instead. Also, I want to apologize for leaving without you that night, I confess. He stops this time, fixing me with those cold eyes. Just when I think I'm finally going to get an answer, he shakes his head and moves around the table. Don't worry about it. I have to get everything ready for tonight. He brushes past me and gestures his arms towards the stairs. I turn back towards the stairs, but I don't leave. Instead, I face him head on, determined to get something out of him. I'm not leaving until you talk to me, I say stubbornly, folding my arms over my chest for good measure. Talk to you? When you refuse to talk with me? When you shut me out and take off? Gray snaps back, his eyes suddenly fiery. I thought you understood, I protest. It's not that I don't want to be open with you. I still want to be friends. His nostrils flare wide, his temper getting the better of him. Friends don't treat each other the way you treat me, he growls, his words surprising me. Are you still mad about that night? I blurt out. I don't know, Valkii. You tell me. He speaks through gritted teeth, and I know I was right on the money. I said I was sorry, I add meekly. I get that, and I get that you need time to work out whatever it is that makes you not trust me. I just didn't realize it would hold us back so much, that you would freeze up around me and take off running. You're making this really hard. How can we move forward when you're so stuck in the past? He says, his eyes flaring up. I press my mouth shut and look long and hard at the floor. He's got me there. How does he know the past? How does he know the past has anything to do with why she's so, like, whatever. The mood is absolutely terrible. Is this the right time to tell him? Would it be the end of the world? I clench my hands at my side. He does deserve the truth. I can totally see where he's coming from, knowing that I'm keeping secrets from him while simultaneously holding back from being with him because of my fear sounds so frustrating. If I were in his shoes, I'd be at a total loss on where to go from here too. The ball is in my court. I want to move forward together, if that's still even possible. I know I can't stall forever, and I risk losing him the more I try. I lock eyes with those beautiful stormy grey eyes of his, and all I can think about is how much more upset he'd be with me if I came clean. Once again, I freeze up in place, unable to get a word out. This is not how I wanted things to go. I wanted a calm, pleasant environment. I wanted to be on his good side. I wanted to feel like we were strong, like we could endure. Just leave, Valkii, he says with a tired sigh. Please. He turns his back on me, and I've lost any semblance of courage to continue our conversation. Feeling my heart rate spiking, I leave the basement without another word. You're pissing me off, you two. You're pissing me off. I feel like I want to do another episode. Let me have a look. Nope, great. I don't have that much longer to go. When do I leave now? I'm gonna do another one. Oh, but I will do it in the next one, my bad.